Hello, good afternoon, everyone. We'll be continuing with our discussion on moral philosophers. Day before yesterday, we saw Plato and Aristotle. Yesterday, we discussed other Western philosophers, such as contractual theorists, Locke and Hobbes. Then we discussed utilitarianism theorist, Mill and Bentham. Bentham was the first one. Mill came and answered the arguments which were raised against Bentham's philosophy of utilitarianism. We looked upon categorical imperative school, or deontological school as it is called, of Immanuel Kant. We also looked about the philosophy of John Rawls. John Rawls' philosophy I explained to you yesterday using the example of affirmative action. Any kind of contract, any kind of rules, if they are framed behind the veil of ignorance, they remove the bias that people may have because of their present situation. This is what we discussed in John Rawls. So these are broadly the Western philosophers that we would be discussing. Today we will turn to some Indian philosophers. Most importantly, we will be turning to Gandhi. All other philosophers, they are Hindu philosophy or Indian philosophy. There are so many schools of thought. We will not be able to cover all of them. That is for philosophy optional. Theory of Nishkam Karma, Buddhism, Jainism, you have all studied in your history classes. We'll be focusing primarily on Gandhi because every year, number one, question on Gandhi is certainly asked every year. And most importantly, because Gandhi has such a wide array of thoughts, wide array of philosophy that this cover almost every aspect of ethics. So we'll be starting with Gandhi and then we'll see about other philosophers as well. So what is the main theory of Gandhi? As such, there is no theory of Gandhi. Gandhi is not a philosopher like Immanuel Kant or Jeremy Bentham or John Stuart Mill. He is not a philosopher. He is not sitting in his ivory tower anywhere and he is not prophesizing that this should be done, that should be done, this is the right way to judge, this is the wrong way to judge, this act is right, this act is wrong. Gandhi is basically a practitioner. Gandhi is the prime example of practice what you preach. Gandhi's philosophy is based on, all of you know, the two terms that are synonymous with Gandhi. They are truth and non-violence. Truth and non-violence. But Gandhi is not the foremost proponent of these terms, truth and non-violence. Buddhism, Jainism, truth and non-violence is at the core of Buddhism and Jainism. In fact, at the core of Hinduism also, Vedic religion, truth and non-violence. Every Ved you read, every Upanishad you read, every Buddhist scripture you read, every Jain philosophy you read, all the philosophies, they are talking about truth and non-violence in one form or the other. So Gandhi is not the first person to talk about these issues. But in modern times, Gandhi is one of the prime examples who has upheld these two values to the highest possible extent. That is why these are synonymous with Gandhi's name. He is the prime example of, as I said, of practice what you preach. So truth is a core aspect, core tenet of Gandhian way of life. Non-violence is the core aspect of Gandhian means of struggle. What is this truth? I hope all of you know truth is simply speaking truth to power, being truthful in your life. Gandhi's books, My Experiment with Truth, where he details about everything that he has done in his life. It's an autobiography of Gandhi in where he's talking about what steps, what are the different acts he has done at various points of his life, who are the people who influenced him, what did he do. When you read this book, you'll become very judgmental. You may become judgmental about Gandhi. Okay, he was like just another man, he's no god or so. Gandhi commits mistakes and he has the audacity to tell the world about those mistakes. He's not merely telling his close friend that I have done something wrong. He's not merely telling his wife that I have done something wrong. He is open about those mistakes to the world. And being open, being emotional, being truthful about such mistakes, about your acts, that takes a lot of courage. So Gandhian philosophy of truth and non-violence ultimately boils down to courage. It takes a lot of courage to be truthful. It takes a lot of courage to be non-violent. Most of the Gandhi's quotes that we read, there are ample number of Gandhi's quotes. Whatever Gandhi says and that has been recorded, that becomes a quote. It has a deep philosophical meaning to it, and such quotes are asked in our exam. Victory achieved by violence is nothing but temporary. A quote that has been asked in the exam. We cannot forgive. It is the virtue of strong. Only strong can forgive. A quote that has been asked in the exam. Rights without duties have no meaning. Again, a quote of Gandhi that has been asked in the exam. So all such quotes, whatever Gandhi has said, all these things flow from this, truth and non-violence. These are at the core of Gandhian philosophy. When we look at truth and non-violence, they result in the practice. These are the philosophical principle, truth and non-violence. These are simply the practices that Gandhi is preaching. And they result in an act of which is known as a satyagraha. Satyagraha, as you can think, satyagraha made of two words, satya and agraha. Agraha is simply request. Request not as in like a passive requester, please do this, please do this, please do this. Gandhi, if you see at the core of it, or if a layman sees Gandhi, he'll say that Gandhi is one of the most irritating persons ever. In fact, many people have commented Gandhi is very irritating. He is irritating because he is able to speak truth to the power and truth is uncomfortable. He is irritating because he is able to convince you with arguments which you don't want to be convinced about, and he is able to tell you you are not able to give any counter argument to him. That leads to irritation. That is why some people call Gandhi to be very irritating fellow. Winston Churchill called him irritating. Many Englishmen called him irritating. Many in India have called him during the days of freedom struggle and even after them that he is one of the most irritating fellow. He is irritating, that's a compliment for him. Why is it a compliment? Because he irritates you with truth. He irritates you with uncomfortable questions to which probably nobody has an answer. The person to whom he is asking those questions, they do not have an answer. This satyagraha is that philosophy of irritation. He is requesting you with truth. He is requesting you to do something with truth. He has truth on his side. He doesn't get impatient with the truth. He doesn't get impatient with your action. You want him to become impatient with your inaction, but he doesn't get impatient with your inaction. Why? Because for Gandhi believes, as I said earlier, that victory achieved with violence is nothing but temporary. If some victory is achieved through the means of violence, it is nothing but temporary. A quote that has been asked in the exam, an extremely important quote. Why does he say that victory achieved with violence is nothing but temporary? That is reflected here, satyagraha. Truth and request. Request with truth. Why is victory achieved with violence nothing but temporary? Because when you achieve a victory with violence, that means somebody has lost. The reason why somebody has lost is because somebody was less physically powerful with respect to you in that particular moment when the fight took place. You beat someone. When you beat someone, that person is lying on the ground, that person is down and out. Why? Because that person is physically defeated. But that person is not mentally defeated. Physical defeat leads to mental strength. A person who is physically down and out will probably develop more mental strength to get physically strong in future, come back and defeat you. So your victory is only temporary. Even if the person is not able to defeat you physically at a later date, even if a person is not able to defeat you physically, the person will still gather courage, the person will still gather strength to continuously come and bite you. So you will always be bothered about whether the victory you have achieved is as yet final or not. It is never going to be final, because the person whom you have defeated in a violence is never going to be convinced that your victory is right and his loss is right. Therefore, Gandhi goes on to say that victory achieved with violence is nothing but temporary. It's not final, it's only temporary. And because he realizes that victory achieved with violence is temporary, therefore he chooses the means of satyagraha. He chooses the means of non-violence because he sees that through this he will be able to convince. So Gandhi's philosophy, very importantly, is argumentative. Gandhi is an argumentative person. Why? Because he speaks truth to power and he doesn't become violent. As soon as you become violent, you lose all the argument. जैसे ही आपने किसी के ऊपर हाथ उठाया, जैसे ही आप violent हुए, उसी समय you are going to lose out on all the arguments, right or wrong, whatever you have given before. You are going to lose out on all of that, and now the fight becomes a violent fight between you and the person whom you are fighting. So Gandhi's philosophy is argumentative. This is what lies at the core of Satyagraha. This is what Gandhi says is Satyagraha. Truth, non-violence, practice it in real life, it becomes Satyagraha, and at the core of Satyagraha is argument. Whenever Gandhi says something, there is some background to it, there is some context to it, there is a chain of arguments that flow with it. For example, another Gandhi's quote that is very famous, as I told a few minutes back, is that is about rights and duties. Gandhi says that there are no rights without duties. Philosophy of rights and duties of Gandhi. Gandhi says that there are no rights without duties. Why does he say this? Aren't there human rights? Yes, those rights are performed without any duty. A person gets rights, certain human rights, from the moment that a person is born. I have a right to survive, and not merely to survive like an animal, but to survive like a human being in the conditions that I deem fit for myself. So I have that human right. I have a right not to be violated. I have a right not to be physically hurt. I have a right that I deserve equal opportunity with respect to every other person. All such rights, human rights, they are not dependent upon any duty. They come to a person, they are given to a person by simply at the virtue of that person being a human being. You are a human being, you are born a human being, and you get human rights. There is no contingency upon those rights. There is no if and but in those rights. But Gandhi says that there are no rights without duties. This we have to see in context of that situation. किस context में गांधी ने इस चीज को बोला there are no rights without duties? अगर ये स्टेटमेंट हमारे पास एग्जाम में आती है, तब हम इसको किस तरीके से आंसर करेंगे? इसको आंसर करने का हमारे पास एक तरीका जो है वो ये है कि पहले हमें स्टेटमेंट के बारे में बताएं, हमें कंटेक्स्ट दें, फिर हम बताएं कि ये स्टेटमेंट इस कंटेक्स्ट का पार्ट होगा हिस्टोरिकल पर्सपेक्टिव. दिस इज नथिंग बट हिस्टोरिकल पर्सपेक्टिव. एंड देन वी आर गोइंग टू यूज इट इन मॉडर्न सेंस. एक मॉडर्न एप्लीकेशन क्या है इस पर्टिकुलर स्टेटमेंट का? नो राइट्स विदाउट ड्यूटीज. Why does Gandhi says there are no rights without duties? Gandhi uses these terms rights and duties at several points in his lectures, in his speeches, in his essays, in his articles, whenever he is talking to workers, whenever he is talking to normal people. He has many times given such connotation that there are no rights without duties. Why does Gandhi go on to say this? Gandhi says this, for example, when he is addressing the workers in Madras mill, textile mill, he is addressing the workers, and in the textile mill he is saying that you have all the rights. He goes on to say you have right to form a union, you have right to be paid adequately, you have right to get all the benefits that are being given to employees all over the world. He goes on to elaborate beautifully upon the rights of those workers. I'm just giving you an example. Context अगर exam में लिखना तो किस तरीके से लिखेंगे? He goes on to elaborate what all rights do workers has. At the same time he says those rights would be enjoyable by you, would be enjoyed by you only if you perform your consequent duty of being a good worker. You cannot hold the employer to ransom. You cannot hold the factory to ransom and say we are not going to work, we only need pay. Such rights cannot exist. Therefore, you have to first perform your duties, and while performing your duties, your rights automatically accrue to you. This is what a Gandhian context is. ये जो गांधीयन कंटेक्स्ट ऑफ राइट्स एंड ड्यूटीज है, दिस इज नॉट द मॉडर्न कंसेप्ट ऑफ राइट्स एंड ड्यूटीज. अगर हम किसी कोट एंड कोट, आजकल ये टर्म बहुत फेमस है, जैसे वोक किसी को बोलना, वोक लिबरल. अगर हम किसी वोक लिबरल की टर्म में बोले तो नो राइट्स विदाउट ड्यूटी, सम पर्सन इज गोइंग टू मर्डर यू फॉर दिस, कि नहीं ऐसा तो नहीं है, कई सारे राइट्स हैं. गांधीज कंटेक्स्ट इज एंटायरली डिफरेंट. Gandhi's context is that there is some historical perspective to this. He says rights will only be given to a person on performance of certain duties. What are the duties? Duty of an individual. Wherever you are working, you get rights which are consequent, which are equivalent to those duties. You do not get rights which are more than your duties. This is what Gandhi says. So Gandhi's concept of right and duties is constrained in this regard. At the same time, he goes on to say, he goes on to use this example at another point. He is giving a speech in England, and in England he is saying, again this term, he is using this term, no rights without duties. He says, Englishmen, when they revolted, जो उनका पहले revolution हुआ 1600s के अंदर, उससे पहले 1100s के अंदर जो उनका revolution हुआ, when English people revolted against the church, against the crown, against church, against the crown, we discussed about this revolution yesterday a little bit. Whenever these English people have revolted, it resulted in a Westphalian democracy system. Westphalia democracy उसको treaty बोलते हैं, जहाँ पे parliament के पास power आई और church के पास से, monarchy के पास से power गई. So he says that you revolted for such a system, and in such a system you revolted for your right to pay taxes. Your right to your duty to pay taxes only if you get a right to vote. No taxation without representation. Taxation is a duty, representation is a right. This is what Gandhi says. Taxation and representation. This is a representation. This is a slogan of American Revolution, which they have borrowed from earlier British Revolution. So he is giving this speech in Britain, and he is saying that you have basically fought for this. Taxation is a duty of a citizen. Representation is a right of a citizen. He goes on to say that your democracy is poor. Your democracy is not working as you intended it to be. Your democracy is not able to result in adequate rights for everyone, an adequate economic system for everyone, and therefore, even though you have got your right of representation, you have not followed your duty of taxation. आपने taxes pay नहीं किए, लेकिन आपने rights सारे ले लिए. I hope this context is clear. Why does Gandhi say no rights without duties? He's talking about this statement in a very particular context. He is using this statement to criticize as well as tell people that their duties are equally important. In present day, how does this statement hold? In present day, this statement holds. इसी का हम example लेके कर सकते हैं. We want all the rights that are given to us democratically. A right is our right. That's perfectly fine. We get those rights. But what about duties? We do not perform our duties in a manner that we should be performing. Everybody wants a pie in the cake from the government. Everybody wants subsidized gas. Everybody wants subsidized travel. Everything subsidized. Everybody wants this. What about the duty to pay taxes? Only 2% of the people are actually paying taxes. 4% of the people are filing income tax returns with the government. So therefore, only with revenue that government generates from 2% of people, it is supposed to provide rights to everybody. Right here does not mean the government is providing right to everybody. It does not merely mean a right to vote. It means all other kinds of rights. Collectively, these rights are being provided to everyone, the citizen, only from revenue that is generated from 2% of the citizens, or income tax which is generated from 2% of the income tax and corporate tax, which constitute almost about 55-60% of the total tax revenue. So this is what Gandhi says. A focus on duties is necessary in order to have a meaningful enjoyments of right. No rights without duty. Gandhi says this in a particular context. What does it mean in modern context? It means for meaningful enjoyment of rights, a performance of duties is a must. This is what means it in a present context. A meaningful enjoyment of right, a performance of duties is a must. This is what Gandhi goes on to say. This is how this statement is applicable in the modern sense. It does not mean, as I said earlier, that some rights are contingent upon duty. अगर आप एक ड्यूटी परफॉर्म करोगे तभी आपको ह्यूमन राइट मिलेगा. नो. मॉडर्न कंटेक्स्ट के अंदर वी हैव कम अ फार वे फ्रॉम दैट. Some rights we guarantee automatically to citizens or humans, right, which are guaranteed simply by virtue of being a human being. They are not contingent upon any duty. But most of the rights are contingent upon the duties you perform. This is what Gandhi says when he says no rights without duties, or enjoyment of rights meaningfully has to be accompanied by performance of duty. This is what Gandhi says. This flows from other Gandhi's philosophy. ये वाली जो statement है, ये गांधी के philosophy का एक और strand है, वहां से flow होती है. Gandhi's philosophy of manual labor. No, I'm not here. I'm manual labor. When I say it does not mean all the inhuman practices which go on today. गांधी का मतलब क्या है यहाँ पे? मैनुअल लेबर से मतलब क्या है? सिंपली इट मीन्स फिजिकल वर्क. Physical work. I hope all of you have seen Munna Bhai. In that, the question is asked to Sanjay Dutt that what was the name of farm that Gandhi set up in South Africa? That was Tolstoy Farm. Tolstoy Farm. What used to happen on Tolstoy Farm? Tolstoy Farm पे होता क्या था basically? Tolstoy Farm जो था, it was a farm which was self-sufficient. A self-sufficient area. In this area, in this place, everybody was supposed to do some sort of work. It was kind of an experiment. It was an experiment in how a civilization is made. ये Tolstoy Farm बहुत एक important experiment था. Like, not an experiment, but it was kind of an experiment that how a civilization is actually made. In this farm, what used to happen, there were people living, and every person had a task assigned to him or her. In respect of whatever task you perform, you were given something in return. What were you given? You were given all that was required for basic human survival. You were given food, you were given clothes, you were given some time for entertainment, emotion, everything. That was all given to a person. Suppose there is a group of people who are supposed to sew clothes for people. So they will physically sew the charkha here. They will physically sew the cloth here in the charkha, make a yarn in that charkha, and then through whatever sewing equipment they have, they are going to sew clothes here. Somebody is responsible for cleaning, somebody is responsible for constructing, somebody is responsible for something else. So everybody had some sort of duty here. ये ड्यूटी बेस्ड फार्म है जो टोल्स्टॉय फार्म है. सबकी कुछ ना कुछ ड्यूटी है यहाँ पे, और उस ड्यूटी के कंटेक्स्ट में सबका कुछ ना कुछ रिवॉर्ड मिल रहा है. दिस रिवॉर्ड इज नथिंग बट द राइट ऑफ अ पर्सन. You get your right on performance of duty. Everybody is working. This is Gandhi's concept of manual labor. Manual labor Gandhi considers to be the highest form of human endeavor. Manual labor होगा, and therefore everybody will perform their duty and will get a consequent reward or a consequent right on performance of their duty. यहां से गांधी की सोच बनी इस चीज से. This was the idea of Tolstoy. तो इसलिए इसका नाम टोल्स्टॉय रखा उन्होंने. टोल्स्टॉय के आइडिया के उन्होंने इस कोट के थ्रू इस कोट के थ्रू बताने की कोशिश करी है. नो राइट्स विदाउट ड्यूटीज, और एक्सरसाइज ऑफ एंजॉयमेंट ऑफ राइट्स मीनिंगफुली इज कॉन्सिक्वेंट अपॉन ड्यूटीज परफॉर्म्ड राइटली. दिस इज व्हाट गांधी सेज. ओके, दिस वाज अबाउट गांधीज आइडिया ऑफ मैनुअल लेबर which he implemented in this Tolstoy farm. Next we look at about Gandhi's philosophy of Sarvodaya. सर्वोदय. सर्वोदय फिलॉसफी क्या है? सर्वोदय मीन्स, एज द नेम सजेस्ट, सर्वोदय, सबका उदय होना है. सर्वोदय मीन्स अपलिफ्टमेंट ऑफ ऑल. When we delve deeper into Gandhi's philosophy, we look at Gandhi's views on caste system. गांधी के कास्ट सिस्टम पे, दिस कोर्स डज नॉट रिक्वायर अस टू डेल्व दैट डीप. आई जस्ट क्विकली जस्ट ऊपर से छू के निकल जाएंगे इस चीज को. गांधी बिलीव्स इन कास्ट सिस्टम. फॉर गांधी व्हाट इज दिस कास्ट सिस्टम? कास्ट सिस्टम इज नॉट सम सिस्टम ऑफ डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, ही सेज. Gandhi simply says, as this line is also there in Bipin Chandra, I hope you would have read Bipin Chandra, Gandhi says that all the fruits of a tree are not the same. Some fruits are ripe, some fruits are not ripe, some fruits are sweet, some are sour, and therefore a tree in its totally natural form is not expected to produce all the fruits which have every characteristic to be same. Then how are human beings expected to produce human beings that are same? So Gandhi says that there is diversity. That there is diversity. We must not say that everyone is same, everyone is same, everyone is equal. No, Gandhi says that when you say that everyone is equal, everybody is same, you are essentially trying to degrade the distinct characteristics of that person. This is what Gandhi says. Distinct characteristics आपको एक लोग के खत्म नहीं कर रहे हैं. So Gandhi is a staunch believer in diversity. Distinct characters of a person. अगर आप ये बोल के कि सब लोग सेम हैं, सब लोग एक ही माँ के पुत्र हैं और ये सब चीजें, तो therefore Gandhi says no, you have to believe in diversity, number one. Gandhi says when you believe in diversity, you also have to acknowledge the fact. एक acknowledgement of fact है, acknowledgement of fact that some person has some sort of quality, other person has other type of quality. That quality has, according to Gandhi, he says, it has been practiced in our society. Whatever qualities you had, they have been practiced, they have been imbibed in you over centuries or over a millennia. Therefore, Gandhi says that caste system is perfectly right. Caste system सही क्यों है? Caste system के बारे में so Gandhi says a son should pursue the steps of his father. A son should always know the profession of his father. If you are a farmer, then your son should be a farmer, or at least he should know how to farm. This is what Gandhi says. He's not saying that you should not be able to do something else. He says you are welcome to do something else. For Gandhi, caste system flows from this acknowledgement of fact that there is diversity, acknowledgement of fact that people have different competencies. People have different competencies. Acknowledgement of the fact that different competencies are a result of millennia. एक millennia से some family, this is what Gandhi says, this is not what I am saying. Gandhi says that एक millennia से some family is in the practice of, let's say, farming. Someone is in the practice of, let's say, carpentry. Someone is in the practice of, let's say, plucking fruits from trees. So Gandhi says over millennia, this practice, आज की तारीख में हम बात करते हैं कॉम्पिटेंस की, इकोनॉमिक्स के अंदर हम बात करते हैं स्पेशलाइजेशन की. स्पेशलाइजेशन क्या है? इंडिया स्पेशलाइजेज इन समथिंग, चाइना स्पेशलाइजेज इन समथिंग, जापान स्पेशलाइजेज इन समथिंग, यूएसए, यूरोप, दे स्पेशलाइज इन समथिंग एल्स. अगर हम ग्लोबल वैल्यू चेन बनाएंगे तो ग्लोबल वैल्यू चेन के अंदर अलग अलग रीजन्स की अलग अलग कॉम्पिटेंसीज है. सो गांधी इज सेइंग दैट रिकॉग्नाइज दिस थिंग. हर एक रीजन की अपनी अलग अलग कॉम्पिटेंसी है, अलग अलग स्पेशलाइजेशन है, which has been perfected. He doesn't use the word perfected, which he says which have been in practice from millennia. चाइना अगर आज की तारीख में वर्ल्ड की असेंबली है, फैक्ट्री है, so गांधी says चाइना has developed that competency. तो सबसे पहले हमें इस फैक्ट को रिकॉग्नाइज करना पड़ेगा. और अगर हमें आईफोन सबसे सस्ता बनाना है तो चाइना के अंदर असेंबली होनी पड़ेगी और यूएस के अंदर उसकी रिसर्च होनी पड़ेगी, यूरोप के अंदर किसी और पार्ट की रिसर्च होनी पड़ेगी, जापान, ताइवान, साउथ कोरिया के अंदर कोई पार्ट्स उसके मैन्युफैक्चर होने पड़ेंगे, तभी एक मोस्ट इफेक्टिव, मोस्ट चीप एंड मोस्ट प्रोडक्टिव आईफोन निकल के आएगा. सो गांधी सेज दैट फर्स्ट रिकॉग्नाइज दिस फैक्ट. देन ही गोज ऑन टू से कि ऐसा नहीं है कि चाइना को हमेशा असेंबल ही करना है. ही सेज दैट चाइना शुड नो दैट असेंबली इज देयर कॉम्पिटेंस. तो इसलिए उनको असेंबल करना तो आना ही चाहिए. लेकिन साथ में चाइना चाहे तो दूसरे फोन्स, वन प्लस, रेडमी, एमआई, जो जितने भी फोन है, इनका भी प्रोडक्शन स्टार्ट कर सकता है चाइना. बिल्कुल स्टार्ट करे, देयर इज नो रेस्ट्रिक्शन. तो गांधी गोज ऑन टू से कास्ट सिस्टम के अंदर कोई रेस्ट्रिक्शन ऐसी नहीं है. ही सेज इट इज वर्क बेस्ड, इट इज सिंपली डिविजन ऑफ लेबर. He says it is division of labor, just like it is happening in this Tolstoy farm. A person is responsible for cleaning. I'm not saying that his son or the son of his son should also be responsible for cleaning. But what I am saying is that his son or son of his son should know cleaning. उसको क्लीन करना आना चाहिए. Why does Gandhi go on to say, इसकी कई बार एक्सप्लेनेशन दी जाती है, गांधी ने भी अपने कई वर्क्स में दी है. गांधी goes on to say that this practice has been going on over millennia. This practice has been, this particular thing has been practiced, and therefore a competence has been developed. You are a farmer, you want to go and do business, you are welcome to go and do business, but the chances of your success in business are probably low. If your business does not succeed, you must have some other profession to fall back onto. What is that profession in which you have natural competence? That profession is farming. So this is what Gandhi says about caste system. So this is Gandhi's view about caste system. A perfectly rational view, and certainly a view that has been contradicted by many people. Ambedkar goes on to contradict. Ambedkar goes on to say Gandhi was a casteist, bigot, and all these things. Ambedkar goes on to say that no, caste system has produced lot of inequalities and produced lot of inhuman acts in our society. Yes, Ambedkar is also right, Gandhi is also right, and that is why still we are struggling about Gandhi-Ambedkar debates. गांधी जो बोल रहे हैं वो गलत नहीं है, और अंबेडकर जो बोल रहे हैं वो भी गलत नहीं है. But the difference between Gandhi and Ambedkar as far as caste system is concerned is Gandhi goes on to analyze the problem historically, how it emerged, what was the basis, what was the rationale of its emergence. कि specialization हुआ, work का division of labor हुआ, उस particular reason को गांधी बोल रहे हैं that this reason is perfectly right, इसमें अंदर कोई गलती नहीं है. Ambedkar is also right. Ambedkar says that इस reason की होने की वजह से some section of the community they were treated in an inhuman manner. They were treated in a manner which does not behove how we treat a human being or another person. So Ambedkar is also right. Ambedkar is talking about consequences, and Gandhi is talking about the rationale of emergence. Rationale of emergence अगर right है और अगर उसके consequences गलत हैं, तो will you be able to justify these two things? Ambedkar says no, Gandhi says we need improvement. This is the difference between Ambedkar and Gandhi. Ambedkar says that abolish this caste system, this should not exist, this and not. Gandhi says that abolishment of caste system, number one, it cannot happen, and number two, there is no point of abolishing caste system. What we can do is, we can do in correcting the mistakes that caste system has produced. This is what Gandhi's philosophy is. Gandhi's philosophy is correction of mistakes. Ambedkar's philosophy is more revolutionary in nature. Ambedkar says that abolish this system altogether. Gandhi says you cannot abolish the system. Why can't you abolish the system? क्योंकि इसका origin जो है बहुत organic origin है. अगर हम इंडिया के अंदर इस सिस्टम को हम कास्ट सिस्टम बोल दिया, सी अगेन थोड़ा सा पर्सनल वाली चीज है, इमोशनल हो जाते हैं कई सारी चीज के अंदर. इफ यू लुक एट इंडियन हिस्ट्री, इफ यू लुक एट इंडियन सोसाइटी एंड ऑल, मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स द कमेंट्री इन इंडियन सोसाइटीज हैज बीन रिटन बाय वेस्ट. West probably doesn't understand our society, the origin of our society, how our society has branched into various streams as much as we do. What is caste system? इंडिया के अंदर हमने बोल दिया इस चीज को कास्ट सिस्टम. अगर हम ग्लोबल वैल्यू चेंज को बोले आज की तारीख में एनालाइज करें, दिस इज नथिंग बट मॉडर्न डे कास्ट सिस्टम. अगर हम आज की तारीख में अमेरिकन सोसाइटी को जज करें, देयर इज नथिंग बट मॉडर्न डे कास्ट सिस्टम. देयर इज लॉट ऑफ हेरिडेटरी वेल्थ ट्रांसफर दैट टेक प्लेस. There are opportunities that are given to a certain section of people which are not available to another section of people. You must have heard about last year's scam of admission to Ivy League universities. All these film stars and Hollywood celebrities, what they were doing is they were trying to they outsource the task of admission of their children to some professional agency. That professional agency used to make very good resumes, make sure that scores of children of those celebrities are very good so that they can get admission to Harvard or any other Ivy League university. So therefore admission to these universities were being constrained to a certain sect of people. That is modern day casteism. So Gandhi goes on to say caste system है, जो भी discrimination है, discrimination गलत है, लेकिन जो existence है, आप किस चीज को कर रहे हो वो चीज evolve हुई है. You have not done this. This is not a result of somebody saying कि आज से तुम्हें ये करना है, आज से तुम्हें ये करना है, आज से तुम्हें ये करना है, आज से तुम्हें ये करना है. This is not a result of somebody saying. He says that this is a very organic system and therefore it's very difficult to change or completely abolish the system. Today it exists in some form, hereditary form में exist करता है. कल को अगर आप इसको एबॉलिश कर दो तो किसी और फॉर्म के अंदर दोबारा से ओरिजिनेट होगा. व्हाई? बिकॉज स्पेशलाइजेशन इज सर्टेनली गोइंग टू टेक प्लेस एट एवरी पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इन हिस्ट्री एंड इन फ्यूचर. So Gandhi goes on to say, rather than abolishing the system, we should correct the mistakes, the consequences that the system has produced. इसने जो गलत चीजें प्रोड्यूस करी हैं, discrimination for example, discrimination against what he called as people as Harijans. That was the term introduced by Gandhi. तो वो बोल रहे हैं कि हरिजन्स के अगेंस्ट जो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन है उसको हमें खत्म करना है. वी हैव टू वर्क टुवर्ड्स देयर अपलिफ्टमेंट. अपलिफ्टमेंट कैसे करना है? फॉर दिस ही गिव्स दिस फिलॉसफी ऑफ सर्वोदय. upliftment of all, this is what sarvodaya means. Sarvodaya, सबका उदय होना है. He says everybody should be treated in such a manner that conditions for their improvement, that the condition that they are exposed to result in equal opportunities for all. That is sarvodaya philosophy. Sarvodaya philosophy क्या है? Upliftment of all. Upliftment of all मतलब you treat different people differently. You treat different people differently, you ensure that they get all the facilities, you ensure that they also get all the opportunities such as education, health, skill development, सारी उनको opportunities मिले, so that they are also able to compete, so that they are also able to rise up in the society. This is what Gandhian philosophy of Sarvodaya is. A very important philosophy of Sarvodaya of Gandhi ji. These are the basic concept of Gandhian philosophy. It's based on truth and non-violence. Truth and non-violence in practice, satyagrah. Satyagrah based on this idea of, as I told you, irritating somebody with truth, irritating somebody to that much extent that the person does not have a counter argument to your truthful arguments. That was satyagrah. Then Gandhi goes on to say, then Gandhi's philosophy, we also looked about rights and duties. Gandhi says that duties are an essential ingredient, essential part of somebody to enjoy the right. Rights do not accrue to a person simply by virtue of being a person. This is what Gandhi says. Right do not come to a person simply because you claim you have some right. You will have certain right only when you perform a certain commensurate duty. This is what Gandhi says. इस particular sentence का हमने contextual meaning भी देखा और modern sense के अंदर meaning भी देखा. I gave you two examples, rights and duties का. One example was when he was addressing the workers in Madras mill. He said that you have all the rights that workers have, but those rights are contingent upon duties. I gave you another example when he was giving a speech in England. He talked about taxation without representation. He said, you got this right, but you have not performed your duty, and that is why your democracy is in shambles. We can use this in modern sense. जैसे मैंने आपको tax का example दिया था, only about 2% of people in the country pay direct taxes, and therefore the burden disproportionately falls on them, whereas the rights are enjoyed by everybody. The rights, if we complain that we are not able to get all the rights, we are not able to get clean air and all, we must also look within ourselves, are we actually performing our duty or not? This is its modern day interpretation. Then we talked about Gandhi's philosophy of manual labor in Tolstoy farm. Gandhi said that everybody, this philosophy of rights and duties comes from this Tolstoy farm. In this farm, Gandhi did an experiment that everybody was doing some physical work, and in reward for the physical work, some kind of, and as a reward for the physical work, some kind of, everybody was supposed to perform a duty in form of some physical work in this Tolstoy farm, and in reward for the duty, and in return for the duty, some kind of reward was given to that person. This is what Tolstoy farm is. Then we discussed about Gandhi's philosophy of Sarvodaya. Sarvodaya is Gandhi's philosophy of upliftment of all. Sabko Sarvodaya, sabka uday hona, upliftment for all. This is Gandhi's philosophy. This comes from the fact about views of Gandhi on caste system. Gandhi says that caste system by itself is not problematic. Consequences of caste system are certainly problematic. This is what Gandhi says, and we have to work together in order to correct the consequences of caste system. If caste system produces discrimination, we must end that discrimination. If caste system produces untouchability, we must end that untouchability. But at the same time, by not denying that there are differences in people, by not denying that there is diversity in people, by not denying that there are different levels of competencies amongst different people. One person is very quote unquote intelligent, another person is not as much intelligent. One person is physically strong, another person is not physically strong. Gandhi says that you provide them equal opportunities, and then you say which person goes on to become physically strong, which person does not go on to become physically strong. Provide them equal opportunities through this philosophy of Sarvodaya. let's see which person becomes intelligent, which person does not remain intelligent, which person has more educational achievement, which person has lesser educational achievement. If a person has more educational achievement, he will excel in that field. If a person has less educational achievement, he may not excel in that particular field, and for that he must know the profession of his father. He must be competent in his profession of his father, so that if he fails in his endeavor, he must be able to fall back onto something else. This is what Gandhi says. This is the philosophy of Gandhi. This is Sarvodaya philosophy of Gandhi. Next, लिखोगे थोड़ा कोई क्वेश्चन तो नहीं है? I'll give you some notes about Gandhi's philosophy of Sarvodaya. Please write something. I'll just make you write. Write down a few points about Gandhi philosophy of Sarvodaya. Sarvodaya means upliftment of all, or universal upliftment. It was coined by Mahatma Gandhi. This term was coined by Mahatma Gandhi, taking inspiration from John Ruskin. John Ruskin's book Unto This Last. बुक का नाम है Unto This Last. Write this book in quotes और underline कर लो. Unto This Last is the name of the book. Gandhi, full stop, Gandhi and later social reformers such as Vinoba Bhave embraced this term as the name of the social movement in post-independence India, to ensure that self-determination and equality reached all strata of the society. Sarvodaya is based on three principles. Number one, good of individual is contained in the good of all. The good of individual is contained in the good of all. Number two, value of work of every profession and every task is equal. Value of profession, value of a task, of every profession, value of every task is equal. For example, there is a barber work, a lawyer's work, a farmer work. किसी भी टाइप का वर्क है, a menial work, any kind of work, there is equal value attached to all these works. No work is superior with regard to another work. सब काम equal है. This is what Gandhi says. And third, जो मैनुअल लेबर वाली चीज है मैंने बताई थी, थर्ड इज द लाइफ ऑफ अ लेबर, द लाइफ ऑफ लेबर, अ लाइफ ऑफ लेबर, that is the life of the tiller of the soil, the life of a tiller of the soil and the handicraftsman, is a life worth living, नेक्स्ट पैराग्राफ में लिख सकते हैं, सर्वोदय मूवमेंट had a target of establishing self-supporting village communities. It is a society based on equality and liberty. Which has no room for exploitation and class hatred. Sarvodaya stands for progress for all. And all individuals should do labor. And follow the ideal of non-possession. Non-possession, अगर आपको याद हो तो non-possession is a concept that he borrows from Jainism. And then it will be possible to realize the goal of from each according to his work or deed, and to each according to his need. एक फाउंडिंग फिलॉसफी है कम्युनिज्म की. गांधी को हम कई बार बोलते हैं गांधी इज कैपिटलिस्ट, गांधी इज कम्युनिस्ट, गांधी इज सोशलिस्ट. इट्स impossible to categorize Gandhi in any of these compartments. His views are so fluidic, his thinking is so vast that at one point of time he says from each according to his deed to each according to his need. This is the founding philosophy of communism. But then he goes on to say that this is a society based on liberty and non-exploitation. Nobody is going. Gandhi's philosophy is that he says that there is going to be no political central authority which is going to govern this village. अगर central authority नहीं है, so therefore communism cannot be there. So this is what Gandhi says. This is about Sarvodaya. Now you can give one more subheading and you can write about 7 sins of Gandhiji. 7 sins not of Gandhi, 7 sins by Gandhiji. No, even by is not right. 7 sins according to Gandhi. 7 sins, Gandhi's 7 sins. आप ये लिख लो, Gandhi's 7 sins or 7 sins according to Mahatma Gandhi. This is what Gandhi says. This is Gandhi's conception of what is ethical and what is unethical, what is right, what is wrong. So Gandhi says that there are 7 sins. 7 गलत चीजें हैं जो नहीं होनी चाहिए. What are these 7 things? Gandhi says, number 1, politics without principle. प्रेजेंट कंटेक्स्ट के अंदर ये सवाल पूछा गया हुआ है, गांधी 7 sins and their relevance in present context. So you have to remember all these 7 sins. You have to give example of any of these in your answer. Individually, one of them can be asked in your exam. So write down first, politics without principle. I hope this is very clear. It is talking about politics as opportunism. Opportunistic politics is sinful according to Gandhi. This is what he says. Politics without principles. अगर आपके principles नहीं हैं, तो doing politics is nothing but doing politics opportunistically. Next, he says wealth without work. You generate wealth without doing any work. That is also sinful. Wealth without work, example simply crime. Next, pleasure without conscience. Third sin of Gandhi, third sin that Gandhi says is pleasure without conscience. If you do not have any soul, if you do not have any emotion, what kind of pleasure that are you indulging yourself in? That is third sin of Gandhi, pleasure without conscience. Fourth, knowledge without character. knowledge without character. This is the fourth sin according to Gandhi. Having knowledge but not having the character to utilize that knowledge. इसको without character भी बोल सकते हैं, without wisdom भी बोल सकते हैं. जैसे knowledge without wisdom बोलते हैं कई बार knowledge without character बोलते हैं. Fifth, commerce without morality or business without ethics. Both mean the same. Commerce without morality or business without ethics. We discussed this thing in the first class when we discussed about Plato's views. What is the defining virtue? What is the limiting virtue? What is the defining characteristic and what is the limiting virtue? तो हमने commerce की बात करी थी. Commerce के अंदर हमने देखा था और business के अंदर हमने देखा था that in business everybody has a defining characteristic of earning as much as they want, and the defining or the limiting virtue would be to know how to earn, how much to earn, what kind of money are you capable to generate sustainably. This was the limiting virtue in commerce. So Gandhi says this: commerce without morality or business without ethics. Next, sixth sin according to Gandhi is science without humanity. ऐसे कई बार पूछा जा चुका है इसके ऊपर, साइंस विदाउट ह्यूमैनिटी के ऊपर. आई होप दिस इज वेरी क्लियर. साइंस विदाउट ह्यूमैनिटी, देयर आर एम्पल एग्जांपल्स इन दिस. साइंस विदाउट ह्यूमैनिटी. And finally, the seventh sin according to Gandhi is worship without sacrifice. Worship without sacrifice. Here he importantly ध्यान दो. देखो, गांधी को पढ़ना और गांधी को क्रिटिसाइज करना बहुत आसान होता है, लेकिन गांधी को समझना बहुत मुश्किल है. What does Gandhi say? Worship without sacrifice. Gandhi is not saying कि बलि चढ़ानी पड़ेगी आपको worship करने के लिए. No. In fact, Gandhi, when he went to a temple and he saw bali being offered there, he said that Hinduism needs to be reformed from all these sins. Sacrificing an animal, sacrificing a person, sacrificing somebody who cannot speak or cannot defend himself, for that itself is a total sin by Gandhi. So Gandhi says that that kind of sacrifice is not what he is talking about, a sinful act. Worship without sacrifice, what does it mean? Worship without sacrifice means sacrifice करना एक तरीके से. I'll explain it from bottom up. व्रत रखना. व्रत रखने में क्या करते हो? You are sacrificing 1 day of meal or more than 1 day of meal, and you are building an inner strength of yourself. If you are not sacrificing your pleasure, your senses, अगर आप वर्शिप कर रहे हो और आप साथ में खाना खाते जा रहे हो, अपने आप आपने व्रत रखा हुआ है और व्रत रखे आपने बोला मैं अन्न नहीं खाऊंगा, और अन्न की बजाय पूरे दिन टिक्की चाट समोसे पकोड़े खाते जा रहे हो. There is no sacrifice you are performing in that worship. This is what Gandhi says. So he says worship without sacrifice. If you are worshipping something, if you are religiously inclined towards something, then it has to be accompanied with some kind of sacrifice. Sacrifice, if you are devoting yourself to Lord, if you are devoting yourself to whatever God you believe in, it cannot be accompanied without any sort of sacrifice. You must sacrifice your personal relationship in order to build a relationship with God. Now he's not saying sacrifice का मतलब कि जो है दीन दुनिया छोड़ दो, पूरे मोह माया में चले आओ. But he says that you must be treating God at an equal or at least at a higher or at least an equal pedestal with respect to other beings. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपने बोला कि भगवान के पास बैठना है, वर्शिप हो गई, लेकिन आपने भगवान को ट्रीट ढंग से नहीं किया. लेकिन अगर आप भगवान को ट्रीट ढंग से करते हो, so probably you'll be missing out on some other task. This is the sacrifice that Gandhi is talking about. This is worship without sacrifice, which is sinful according to Gandhi. Worshipping with sacrifice. You have to tune your body, you have to tune your mind, you have to tune your soul in accordance with the tenets of a particular religion that you are following. This is Gandhi's worship without sacrifice as sinful. These are 7 sins of Gandhi. 7 sins according to Gandhi. Finally, we turn to Gandhi. We have talked about rights versus duty. Finally, we turn to one last aspect of Gandhi, that is Swaraj. Gandhi has written an essay available in book also. छोटी सी एक book है, पतली सी, उसका नाम होता है हिंद स्वराज. गांधी से हम relate करते हैं कई बार राम राज्य का concept. So what does this राम राज्य और what does this हिंद स्वराज mean? What does Swaraj mean according to Gandhi? Swaraj का मतलब क्या है? Swaraj, all of you know, Swaraj means independence. अपना राज, Swaraj, independence. Swaraj for Gandhi has multiple connotations. Certainly it has political connotation. Political connotation का मतलब that there is a British Raj that is there in India right now and that might be replaced with an Indian Raj. An Indian Raj replacing British Raj, that is Gandhi's political connotation of Swaraj. At the same time, Gandhi has a cultural connotation of Swaraj. Cultural connotation of Swaraj is that our mind has been captured by the Western thought. Our mind has been captured by whatever the Britishers are telling us to be right or wrong. Go to 1920s when Gandhi was actively involved in Indian politics. He's saying, we are thinking from Britishers' point of view. We are thinking what Britishers are asking us to or telling us to think. We have to open up our minds towards Indianness, towards our own culture. So Gandhi says it's not just a struggle to get political freedom, it's a struggle to free up our minds. Gandhi को हम father of nation क्यों बोलते हैं? What is the biggest contribution of Gandhi? And in fact, biggest contribution of Vivekananda also. Gandhi's biggest contribution is he taught us, he gave us. If you read Bipin Chandra के अंदर बहुत अच्छे से इस चीज को इमोशनली समझा हुआ है. First chapter and last chapter of Bipin Chandra, very introduction, and in the last chapter he talks about the philosophy behind Indian freedom struggle. So Gandhi was the person who imbibed this thing in Indian mind that you can dare to think. Indian mind was captured by this British sense of superiority. Britishers, in fact, इसके अंदर विवेकानंद का contribution और भी ज्यादा बड़ा है. विवेकानंद इस चीज को और डिटेल में बात करते हैं. विवेकानंद का एक कोट जो सबसे फेमस है, सबने लोगों ने सुना होगा, अराइज अवेक एंड स्टॉप नॉट टिल द गोल इज रीच्ड. In what context did he give this quote? He gave this quote in the context of opening Indian minds. Vivekananda observed this 1800s, 1890s के आसपास Vivekananda was at his peak. What did Vivekananda say? Vivekananda's biggest contribution is this, that he told us, he enabled us to think for ourselves. He observed this fact. He said that India has been captured not by Britishers, India has been captured by Indians only. In 1857 revolt, you see, in any of the further revolts, you see, 90% of soldiers of British army were Indians only. Who were fighting for British? They were Indians. India as a concept, उस समय शायद हो सकता है ना हो. सैफ अली खान ने भी कुछ दिनों पहले बोला कि इंडिया कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं था 1947 से पहले. A totally rubbish statement to make. But he's a film actor, I cannot expect better from him. But Vivekananda goes on to say that India was being captured by Indians. और Indians का concept क्या है वो अभी थोड़ी देर में देखते हैं विवेकानंद के according क्या है. Gandhi also goes on to say this thing that we need to open up our minds. We are being subjugated not merely politically. पॉलिटिकल सब्जुगेशन तो चाहे ब्रिटिश एक्सरसाइज करें, चाहे इंडियन एक्सरसाइज करें, चाहे नेहरू जी आए, चाहे नरसिम्हा राव आए, चाहे मोदी जी आए, चाहे वाजपेयी जी आए, चाहे मनमोहन सिंह आए, कोई भी आए. Political subjugation is different. Freedom is freedom of mind, what he says. Swaraj is not merely political Swaraj. Swaraj is this mental Swaraj. Freeing yourself from the clutches of this Western thought. Think for yourself. Do not think from the perspective that somebody else wants you to think. This is one of the major contribution of Gandhi. Swaraj का जो उनका connotation है, वो एक cultural Swaraj, mental Swaraj की बात है. Freedom of the mind, this is what he says. He goes on to say freedom, Swaraj as in Swaraj also emotional Swaraj. He goes on to say Swaraj as in economic Swaraj, एक important aspect है. Economic Swaraj क्या है गांधी के लिए? Economic Swaraj is, अभी हमने देखा सर्वोदय के concept के अंदर, self-dependent villages. Self-dependent villages हैं, that is Gandhi's concept of economic Swaraj. Self-dependence of the country. Being independent of, let's say, imports by Britishers. Britishers will not be telling us that you produce indigo and you do not eat. The conditions of farmer, indigo satyagraha, Champaran satyagraha जो है, conditions of farmer was very poor. Condition of mill workers was very poor. Why? Because Britishers were the one who were telling us what to produce, how much to produce, and for whom to produce. They were telling us, produce this thing, we will give you this much money for this, and we will sell this thing in Europe, primarily UK. So they used to earn huge profits because of this, and Indian farmers were suffering, our land was degrading. So Gandhi observed this, and Gandhi said that we need to be self-dependent. We need to stop this onslaught of British hegemony over us. यहाँ पे एक और कंटेक्स्ट की बात करता हूं मैं. Again, this is about Gandhi and Gandhi being misunderstood many times. Many people say that Gandhi was, you will see many people criticizing Gandhi and saying कि भाई Gandhi was against technology. Gandhi used to say कि भाई go back to the earlier ways. जैसे अभी हमने देखा, he says that tilling the soil and handicraftsman, they are the highest form of labor. तो हम बोलते हैं कि Gandhi is against technology. Partly yes, partly no. Is Gandhi against technology? He says as far as technology leads to capturing of your mind, he is against technology. Gandhi said, and this is a quote of Gandhi, Gandhi said that railways देश को बर्बाद कर रहा है. Railways देश को बर्बाद कर रहा है, railways नहीं होना चाहिए. This is what Gandhi says. Why does Gandhi say? Gandhi is not saying कि भाई, Gandhi does not mean to say कि देश के अंदर रेलवेज नहीं होना चाहिए, देश के अंदर एक ऐसा फास्टर मीन्स ऑफ ट्रांसपोर्टेशन नहीं होना चाहिए जिससे आप लॉन्ग डिस्टेंसेस इजीली अच्छे समय के अंदर ज्यादा अमाउंट ऑफ गुड्स को ट्रांसपोर्ट कर सकते हो. बट व्हाट गांधी सेज इज, गांधी सीज दैट ब्रिटिशर्स हैव बिल्ट द रेलवेज नेटवर्क ओनली इन दोज एरियाज वेयर नंबर वन दे कैन ट्रांसपोर्ट देयर आर्मी कंटिजेंट्स वेरी क्विकली. आगरा से दिल्ली रेलवे बनाई जाएगी, क्यों? क्योंकि आगरा और दिल्ली कैंटोनमेंट है और यहां से सोल्जर्स को जल्दी से जल्दी भेजा जा सकता है. पहली चीज ये गांधी ने देखी कि गांधी ने जो देखा कि रेलवेज का मूवमेंट, रेलवेज का लेआउट है इंडिया के अंदर, दैट इज टू फैसिलिटेट मूवमेंट ऑफ ट्रूप्स. सेकेंडली, रेलवेज का लेआउट जो है दैट इज टू फैसिलिटेट एक्सट्रैक्शन ऑफ रॉ मटेरियल्स फ्रॉम हेयर. आप रेलवे बनाओगे ईस्टर्न पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया में, जहां से आप आयरन ओर, कोल, इंडिगो, कॉटन, ये सब चीजें वेस्टर्न पार्ट में बनाओगे, कॉटन वहां से स्टार्ट कर सकते हो, in order to facilitate movement of Indian goods for British benefit. Indian iron ore will go to Britain, Indian cloth will go to Britain, Indian cotton will go to Britain, rather than being utilized here in form of any industry. So that is why Gandhi says and opposes railways. He is not saying कि रेलवे खराब है, कि टेक्नोलॉजी आने से सब बर्बाद हो गया. He is saying कि इस टेक्नोलॉजी की वजह से देश का भला नहीं हो पा रहा है, देश लूट रहा है. That is why he goes on to oppose technology. So as far as opposition of technology is concerned, yes, Gandhi opposes technology. But why does he oppose? It is in that particular context that he opposes. At the same time, yes, certainly Gandhi also opposes technology, as we can see from the statement of Sarvodaya. Gandhi opposes technology as far as it leads to unemployment. It leads to substitution of manual labor with mechanical labor. Gandhi says manual labor is the highest form of human endeavor. Mechanical labor as in machines labor is not the highest form of human labor. So Gandhi goes on to say, yes, human labor should be prioritized with regard to machine. But he doesn't say that why should machine. He has not been exposed to that much technology. उस समय इतनी टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं थी जिससे ह्यूमन बींग्स का काम बहुत आसान हो रहा हो और ह्यूमन बींग्स उस काम को आसान होने की वजह से कहीं और प्रोडक्टिवली एम्प्लॉयड हो. आज की तारीख में अगर एक काम आसान होता है, एक काम ह्यूमन बींग का एक मशीन करने लगती है, तो उसकी वजह से 10 और रास्ते खुल जाते हैं ह्यूमन बींग के पास स्किल डेवलप करके अपने आप को कहीं और एम्प्लॉय करने के लिए. लेकिन उस समय नहीं था, इसलिए गांधी कुड नॉट फोरसी दिस थिंग. दैट इज व्हाई ही इज इन समवॉट ऑपोजिशन टू टेक्नोलॉजी. एज सच टेक्नोलॉजिकल ऑपोजिशन नहीं है. टेक्नोलॉजिकल ऑपोजिशन इज प्राइमरीली बिकॉज द टेक्नोलॉजी इज लीडिंग टू ईटिंग ऑफ इंडियाज रिसोर्सेस, subtraction of India, movement of India's resources away from utilization here and towards Britishers. That is why Gandhi goes on to oppose technology. I think that's all about Gandhi's philosophy. There would be multiple quotes that you would find. Means ends हमने बात नहीं करी. Okay, means ends एक और गांधी की philosophy का पार्ट रह गया. Means and ends. Means and ends. कल हमने देखा था means and ends in Kantian school. Means ends. Means क्या है? Means are the methods. और end क्या है? The goal. What does Immanuel Kant says? Immanuel Kant says end क्या था? Goal या फिर consequence. Means end dichotomy पूरा ethics इसी चीज से भरा हुआ है. Consequence. Utilitarian will say that if ends are good, if ends are being maximized for maximum number of people, that is the consequences are good, the act is justified. This is what utilitarianism says. What does Kant says? Kant says ends does not matter. It is means which matter. He says if you are using human being as a means, it is unethical because human being is an end, humanity is an end in itself. He is saying if you are lying, even to the extent of saving someone else's life, that is wrong, even though the end may be good. Why does he say that? He says that because ends are not in our control. This is what Gandhi says. Gandhi says that means are primary, ends are not. Wrong means even for right ends cannot be justified. Gandhi's quote. Wrong means for right ends cannot be justified. Means are always primarily. This is Gandhi's philosophy of means and ends. Gandhi says that you must always pursue right means for right ends. Right means for wrong ends भी नहीं हो सकते हैं. ऐसा दिमाग में मत डालना कि right mean है लेकिन objective ही गलत है. Objective ही गलत है तो act 100% wrong है. लेकिन अगर ऑब्जेक्टिव सही है और मीन्स गलत है तब भी एक्ट गलत है. दिस इज व्हाट गांधी सेज. सो गांधी सेज राइट मीन्स और राइट मेथड्स फॉर राइट एंड्स और राइट कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस. दिस इज व्हाट मेक्स एन एक्ट टू बी एथिकल. राइट मीन्स एंड राइट एंड्स. एंड व्हाई डज गांधी से दैट राइट मीन्स आर नेसेसरी? बिकॉज गांधी इज अ स्टॉन्च बिलीवर इन द फिलोसफी ऑफ हिंदू फिलोसफी ऑफ निष्काम कर्मा. निष्काम कर्मा. निष्काम कर्मा मतलब सेल्फलेस वर्क और डिजायरलेस वर्क. कर्म किए जा, फल की इच्छा मत कर, गीता सार के अंदर हम पढ़ते हैं. दिस इज द एसेंस ऑफ गीता, निष्काम कर्मा. Gandhi is a staunch believer in this. Gandhi says that it is your duty to do your work. That is why Gandhi is focusing primarily on duties. Gandhi says right आते हैं तो आते रहेंगे बाद में. Gandhi says that your objective is to work, is to do. You do something, it will automatically result in the right thing. This is what Gandhi says. You do something, your focus should be on the means. Means हम चूज करते हैं कि क्या करना है, किस तरीके से क्या होगा वो हमारे हाथ में नहीं है. What would be the end result? That is not in our hands. What is in our hands is the means, is the methods that we choose. Philosophy of Nishkam Karma, the essence of Bhagavad Gita. This Nishkam Karma comes from, जिसको हम आजकल बात करते हैं, कर्म योग. कर्म योग, कर्म योग के पीछे जो फिलॉसफी है वो निष्काम कर्मा है. कर्म योग एज द नेम सजेस्ट, काम करना है. यू हैव टू वर्क हार्ड, यू हैव टू वर्क राइट, यू हैव टू बी गिविंग एफर्ट्स. बट योर टास्क इज नॉट टू वरी अबाउट रिजल्ट्स. इफ यू आर डूइंग द राइट थिंग without any expectation of results, that is the right way to do. This is in fact, अगर इसको हम इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में ट्रांसलेट करें तो this is in fact the true definition of true altruism. Altruistic philosophy और altruism क्या होता है? Altruism, मुझे किसी को हेल्प करना अच्छा लगता है. अगर मैंने बोला कि अगर रास्ते में कोई व्यक्ति जा रहा है एंड आई फील दैट आई शुड हेल्प दैट पर्सन, इफ आई हेल्प दैट पर्सन आई गेट सम सॉर्ट ऑफ सेटिस्फैक्शन. इफ आई से आई हेल्प दैट पर्सन, अब देखो शब्दों का खेल है यहां पे. हेल्पिंग दैट पर्सन टू गेट सेटिस्फैक्शन versus simply helping that person because I feel that it is my duty to help that person. There is someone who is in the need of help. I help that person because it is my duty to help that person. It's a stranger, I don't even know that person, but I have a certain duty towards another human being or any other object, that I have a duty that I must help it. It's some kind of need. अगर मैं उसको हेल्प कर रहा हूं without any expectation of benefit, material or immaterial benefit, tangible or intangible benefit. That is the theory, that is the essence of निष्काम कर्मा. और ट्रू अल्चुरिज्म, ट्रू वर्ड इंपॉर्टेंट है यहां पे. लेकिन अगर मैंने किसी को हेल्प करी ये सोच के कि मुझे उससे अच्छा लगेगा, दैट आई विल फील गुड इफ आई हेल्प, then it does not remain altruism. Why? Because feeling good is pleasure of your own senses. आप अपनी फीलिंग गुड, मुझे पैसा कमाने से अच्छा लगता है, मैंने किसी की हेल्प करी, उसने मुझे पैसा दिया, दैट इज वन वे टू सेटिस्फाई योर नीड, सेटिस्फाई योर डिजायर. उसने मुझे पैसा नहीं लिया, केवल उसने मुझे स्माइल दी, थपथपाया, बात अच्छे से करी, दैट मेड मी फील गुड. If I helped him in anticipation of this, अगर मैंने उससे एक्सपेक्ट करते हुए हेल्प किया है कि वो व्यक्ति अगर मैं उसकी हेल्प करूंगा तो मुझसे खुश होगा, मुझे हो सकता है कुछ रिवॉर्ड दे, मुझे अच्छा लगेगा, दैट इज नॉट ट्रू एल्चुरिज्म. दैट इज वर्किंग फॉर योर ओन सेल्फ गेन, वर्किंग इन योर ओन सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट. सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट में काम ना करना, उसको हम बोलते हैं निष्काम कर्मा. निष्काम कर्मा इज no expectation of reward, be it tangible, intangible. That is nishkam karma. So these are all about this is all Gandhi's philosophy, Gandhi's school of thought. We can also talk about Vivekananda here and Vivekananda's contribution. Vivekananda's contribution, we can move on from Gandhi now and see what are Vivekananda's thoughts and Vivekananda's contribution. What does Vivekananda say? What is Vivekananda's philosophy? Not going to go into this. Vivekananda philosophy हमें नहीं जानना है. Vivekananda's religious philosophy, Advait Vedanta. Again, we do not need to go into we do not need to study what does Vivekananda say about Hinduism, about different schools of thought of philosophy, what are his commentary about religion and all. We don't need to go that. That is for a philosophy to study. What we'll be studying here about Vivekananda is what are his contribution towards nationalism. What does Vivekananda say about nationalism? What is nationalism according to Vivekananda? Vivekananda says that Indian nationalism, अगर हम nationalism की बात करें, there are two words, nationalism and patriotism. पेट्रियोटिज्म क्या है, नेशनलिज्म क्या है, डिफरेंस क्या है इनके अंदर, कैसे एक चीज से दूसरी चीज के अंदर आते हैं. क्वेश्चन पूछा हुआ है मेंस के अंदर अबाउट पेट्रियोटिज्म, नेशनलिज्म. नॉट श्योर इनमें से किसके ऊपर पूछा था, बट आई थिंक पेट्रियोटिज्म के ऊपर पूछा था क्वेश्चन. पैट्रियट, व्हाट इज, हु इज अ पैट्रियट, हु इज अ नेशनलिस्ट. नेशनलिज्म पेट्रियोटिज्म के अंदर क्या अंतर है? देखो, as such there is no difference between these two, patriotism and nationalism. It's again वेस्ट वालों ने किसी ने बोल दिया कि भाई आप नेशनलिस्टिक हो, तो नेशनलिज्म को थोड़ा सा एक नेगेटिव कॉनोटेशन दे दिया गया. सेंटर में सुई है और सुई के सेंटर के राइट साइड में देखो तो नेशनलिज्म है, थोड़ा सा लेफ्ट साइड में देखो तो पैट्रियटिज्म है. पैट्रियटिज्म इज लव फॉर मदरलैंड. और फादरलैंड, पैट्रियट बोल रहे हैं तो फादरलैंड की बात करते हैं. लव फॉर फादरलैंड, समझ गए भावना, तो समझ गए होंगे. पैट्रियट, love for fatherland, there is some kind of love for the land that you belong to. इसको हम एक और टर्म बोलते हैं, एक और चीज आती है टोपोफिलिया। टोपोफिलिया, फिलिया मतलब प्यार, फोबिया मतलब डर, फिलिया मतलब प्यार। टोपो, टोपो इज टोपोग्राफी, लैंड, लव टूवर्ड्स लैंड, टोपोफिलिया, ये ज्योग्राफिकल टर्म है टोपोफिलिया। पैट्रियोटिज्म, patriotism is that feeling of love towards your fatherland, that is being a patriot. I am a patriot, that means I love my country. Love for fatherland, that's perfectly fine, but एक quote है इसके अंदर, I think Oliver Wilde का है, किसका है, not a big fan of quotes, certainly you should not be. Patriotism का एक quote है, patriotism, love for fatherland is perfectly right, but why should love stop at border? You love your country, that's perfectly fine, but why should love stop at an artificial border? कि भाई मैं कश्मीर तक ही प्यार करता हूँ, कश्मीर के आगे पाकिस्तान है, उसको प्यार नहीं करता हूँ। It's perfectly way, a right way to, witty quote अगर देना है तो आप witty quote ऐसा दे सकते हो, that love for fatherland is fine, but why should love stop at border? That's perfectly fine. Anyways, coming to patriotism, patriotism is this love for fatherland. You love your country, you are a patriot. Question is, what is this love? Love का मतलब यहां पे क्या है? Secondly, what is this concept of fatherland? Does it mean love for your district, love for your city, love for your district, love for your state, love for your country, love for your continent, love for your region, love for your world? What is this love about? You go on to see everybody loves their particular land. When you are in Delhi, you say that I love my particular state where I come from. When you are amongst the people of your state, you say I love my particular district where I come from. My district is better than your district. When you go abroad, you are amongst a different group of people, you say my country is better than your country. In future, you may go to Mars and someone else would come to Mars from some other planet. You would say, my planet is better than your planet. So point is, what is this fatherland? Where does the conception of fatherland stop? This is what it is being captured by this. Why should love stop at the border? कि एक बॉर्डर जो है वो एक आर्टिफिशियल डिस्टिंक्शन बनाया गया है। वो जो आर्टिफिशियल डिस्टिंक्शन है बिटवीन कश्मीर on one hand and Pakistan occupied Kashmir on Indian Kashmir on one hand, Pakistan occupied Kashmir on one hand. So why is love stopping at this particular border? चलो यहाँ पे तो हमने border नहीं बोला, ये तो हमारी LOC हो गई, कश्मीर that is Indian part and Pakistan. Why is love stopping here? या फिर यूपी नेपाल, यूपी तक की बाउंड्री है, इसको मैं प्यार करता हूं, उसके बाहर वाली बाउंड्री इसको मैं प्यार नहीं करता हूं. So point is, this leads to this patriotism, fatherland, love of fatherland. It's a perfectly fine, perfectly ethical feeling. But why should love stop at a particular border, which is in fact artificial? इस आर्टिफिशियल बॉर्डर को कंसेप्ट के थ्रू डिफाइन हम एक करते हैं. आर्टिफिशियल हो गया जो कागज के टुकड़े पे लाइन खींच दी, या फिर रियल में जाके वर्ल्ड में एक जगह लाइन खींच दी. आई लव अमेरिका, आई लव इंडिया, आई लव पाकिस्तान, आई लव थाईलैंड. मैंने एक लाइन खींच दी तो वो हो गया मेरा पेट्रियोटिज्म. लेकिन अब मैं डिफाइन कर रहा हूं इस लाइन को खींचने का एक इंटेलेक्चुअल एब्स्ट्रैक्ट तरीका. In my mind, I am trying to define that what is this concept of land that I talk about. जब मैं उसको डिफाइन करने की बात करता हूं, then I delve into this concept of nationalism. Patriotism क्या हुआ? Patriotism के अंदर मैंने एक डिफाइंड एरिया को प्यार किया, लेकिन वो डिफाइंड एरिया को प्यार करने के बाद अब मैंने उस डिफाइंड एरिया के कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स डिफाइन करने की कोशिश करे हैं, जिसको मैं बोल रहा हूं नेशनलिज्म. नेशन, देश और राष्ट्र, ये अंतर है पेट्रियोटिज्म में और नेशनलिज्म में. पेट्रियोटिज्म इज देश, कंट्री, और नेशनलिज्म इज राष्ट्र. देश और राष्ट्र. नाउ आई एम ट्राइंग टू डिफाइन नेशन. नेशन का मतलब क्या है? नेशन का मतलब कोई डिफाइन नहीं कर पाता है, इसलिए नेशन एक एब्स्ट्रैक्ट कॉन्सेप्ट है. एवरीबडी ट्राइज टू डिफाइन नेशन इन डिफरेंट टर्म्स. इफ यू गो टू यूरोप, यूरोप के अंदर यू विल फाइंड कंट्रीज. कंट्रीज आर डिफाइंड, आर डिटरमाइंड बाय लैंग्वेज. जर्मन लैंग्वेज बोलने वाला कंट्री जर्मनी बन गया. फ्रेंच लैंग्वेज बोलने वाला कंट्री फ्रांस बन गया. इटालियन लैंग्वेज बोलने वाला कंट्री इटली बन गया. इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज बोलने वाला कंट्री इंग्लैंड बन गया. सो देयरफॉर इन दोज कंट्रीज द डिफाइनिंग कैरेक्टरिस्टिक of this physical boundary is a concept that has been developed by human beings, which is language. तो अब वहां पे जो नेशन बनेगा, नेशन वुड फॉर्म बेस्ड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ लैंग्वेज. लैंग्वेज के बेसिस पे नेशन बनेगा. यूरोप के अंदर जाओगे तो पेट्रियोटिज्म इज योर कंट्री. लव टुवर्ड्स योर फादरलैंड, दैट इज टुवर्ड्स योर कंट्री. और उस कंट्री को डिफाइनिंग कैरेक्टरिस्टिक क्या हुआ? एक नेशन का कैरेक्टरिस्टिक. और यूरोप में क्या हुआ? वो कैरेक्टरिस्टिक बन गया लैंग्वेज. तो यूरोप के अंदर नेशनलिज्म में और पेट्रियोटिज्म में तो कोई बहुत ज्यादा फर्क है नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि वहां पे कंट्री इज डिफाइंड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ नेशन. फ्रेंच नेशन, जर्मन नेशन, इटालियन नेशन, इंग्लिश नेशन. तो वहां पे द बाउंड्रीज आर कोइंसाइडिंग. इफ यू लुक एट स्विट्जरलैंड, स्विट्जरलैंड लाइज बिटवीन फ्रांस, जर्मनी एंड इटली. इधर ऑस्ट्रिया है. दिस पार्ट ऑफ स्विट्जरलैंड, ये स्विट्जरलैंड है. दिस पार्ट ऑफ स्विट्जरलैंड स्पीक्स जर्मन, दिस पार्ट स्पीक्स फ्रेंच, दिस पार्ट स्पीक इटालियन. ऑस्ट्रियन के अंदर ऑस्ट्रियन एंड जर्मन आर वेरी रिलेटेड लैंग्वेजेस. इनफैक्ट ऑस्ट्रिया के अंदर सब लोग जर्मन नहीं बोलते हैं, विद अ लिटिल बिट डिफरेंट एक्सेंट. तो अब स्विट्जरलैंड को हम क्या बोलेंगे? क्या जर्मन नेशनैलिटी है, फ्रेंच नेशनैलिटी है, इटालियन नेशनैलिटी है. तो स्विस लोग अपनी नेशनैलिटी अपनी लैंग्वेज के अकॉर्डिंग डिफाइन करेंगे. दैट आई एम अ स्विस जर्मन, आई एम अ फ्रेंच, आई एम अ स्विस फ्रेंच, आई एम अ स्विस इटालियन. तो वो इस तरीके से अपनी नेशनैलिटी डिफाइन करते हैं, अगेन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ लैंग्वेज. तो लैंग्वेज बिकम्स अ बेसिस टू रैशनली क्लासिफाई दीज कंट्रीज, so that nationalism and patriotism in these countries are usually not different. What about India? What about other countries? अगर हम बाकी कंट्रीज को देखें, कई सारे कंट्रीज को, so there is some kind of artificial or some kind of natural barrier which acts as a border between two countries. अमेरिका और मेक्सिको को देखें, so there is a Rio Grande that forms the border entirely between America and Mexico. तो एक रिवर है, वो एक डिस्टिंग्विशिंग कैरेक्टरिस्टिक हो गई between Americans and Mexicans. So Americans may also speak Spanish. In fact, in Texas, Nevada, and all these states, most of the people speak Spanish. But Spanish does not become the defining characteristic of American nation and Mexican nation. What becomes the defining characteristic of nation? A river which acts as a boundary. It's an artificial country and there is a natural boundary in that, and therefore one side of that river is America, one side of the river is Mexico. So one becomes American's nation, another becomes Mexican nation. तो वहां पे भी एक defining characteristic हो गया. What about India? इंडिया के अंदर डिफाइनिंग कैरेक्टरिस्टिक क्या है? हाउ वुड यू डिफाइन, इन व्हाट? अब बात करते हैं कि भाई इंडिया कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या है. व्हाट इज मेंट बाय दिस टर्म इंडिया? व्हाट इज मेंट बाय दिस टर्म इंडियन नेशनल? बात करते हैं इंडियन नेशनल्स को इवैक्यूएट करना है. मतलब क्या है इस टर्म का? नेशनल. हु इज दिस नेशन? Which nation are we talking about here? What is the specific reference that we give when we talk about India as a nation? India as a nation, every person or many prominent people have tried to define what is the concept of nation for India. One of the people who foremost defined it, and the concept which we can relate most closely with, is Vivekananda's concept of nationalism. विवेकानंदा ने जिस तरीके से इंडियन नेशनलिज्म को डिफाइन किया है, दैट इज द कॉन्सेप्ट दैट वी रिलेट विद इंडियन नेशन मोस्ट क्लोजली विद. Indian nation is not a nation of geographies. A geographical boundary does not define Indian nation. We do not say कि भाई Indian nation lies between Arabian Sea, West Bay of Bengal, Himalayas on the north, and some boundary Hindu Kush or something in the west. This is the say. It is not the concept of Indian nation. Geography is not the defining characteristic. He says language is not the defining characteristic of Indian nation. There are thousands of languages being spoken here. Therefore, there should be thousands of nation here. He says history is also not the defining characteristic of Indian nation. हिस्ट्री में अशोका का एम्पायर जहां तक था, अकबर का जहां तक था, हर्षा का जहां तक था, he says that is not how we define Indian nation. भाई इंडियन नेशन के अंदर there have been many people who have come from outside. बैक्ट्रियंस थे, हंस थे, मुगल्स थे. There were so many people who have come from outside the country and settled here, who have ruled India for some part of time, at some point of time, और सबके किंगडम अलग अलग थे. So again, that is not how he defines Indian nationalism. For Vivekananda, nationalism is not religious. Nationalism, please mind it very carefully. Essay के अंदर बहुत काम की चीजें हैं. For Vivekananda, nationalism is not religious. Nationalism is not geographical. Nationalism is not linguistic. Nationalism is not historical. हिस्टोरिकल नहीं है. कई सारे कंट्रीज दुनिया में हिस्ट्री के बेसिस पे, हिस्ट्री में किसी का राज था, चिंग डायनेस्टी का राज था, तो वो बन गया चाइना. मिंग सामुराइज, जो भी वट एवर डायनेस्टी यूज्ड टू रूल इन जापान, उस डायनेस्टी का राज था. व्हाट वाज द रेवोल्यूशन, आई एम फॉरगेटिंग, 1850s के अंदर जो हुई थी, सम एम से नाम था, रिमेंबर क्या नाम था, जापान के अंदर जो एम से एक रेवोल्यूशन हुई थी, समुराय से पहले 1850s में, whatever, please look at yourself in world history classes. So whatever the revolution, so some king was ruling there, so therefore that country became that particular nation. But in case of India, that has never been the case. History or ruler in history does not define Indian nationalism. Language does not define. Geography does not define. So what defines Indian nationalism? है क्या Indian nationalism? हम किसी को Indian क्यों बोलते हैं? Religion does not define. Multiple religions are being practiced here. It is spiritualism that defines Indian nationalism. Spiritualism that defines Indian nationalism. Spiritualism क्या है? Vivekananda says that there are defining values. There are defining values in Indians. कुछ ऐसी values हैं जो हमें distinct बनाती हैं बाकी लोगों से. हमारी जो spiritual value है वो हमें distinct बनाती हैं बाकी लोगों से. This is what is nationalism for Vivekananda. How do you relate it in present world? You go to any part of the country today. Even you go to Pakistan today. Vivekananda was not aware कि 1947 में पाकिस्तान का partition होने वाला है. You go to any part of the country today, there are defining characteristics of Indians. For example, the manner in which we worship. We are inherently spiritual people. Spiritual people का मतलब क्या है? Again, a very important quote of Vivekananda. एक तो है rise awake, stop not till the goal is reached. एक और चीज विवेकानंदा का, one of the most important contribution of Vivekananda. Vivekananda used to say, पुराने समय में, in earlier times, नास्तिक वो था जो कि भगवान में विश्वास नहीं करता था. A person was considered a नास्तिक जो भगवान में विश्वास नहीं करता है. In modern times, a नास्तिक is one who does not believe in himself. अपने आप में जो विश्वास नहीं करता है, that person is नास्तिक. Modern philosophy can. This is what Vivekananda's contribution is. इसी के context में उन्होंने बोला था, arise, awake and stop not till the goal is reached. Just a small story here. Ramakrishna Paramhans was the guru of Vivekananda. Ramakrishna Paramhans said that my task was to awaken you. My task was to tell you that what you can achieve, what you can do. It's your task to awaken the youth of the country. तो विवेकानंद ने जो रामकृष्ण मिशन की स्थापना करी थी, उसकी स्थापना इस वजह से की थी टू अवेकन द यूथ ऑफ द कंट्री. वी वर अंडर अ फॉरेन रूल, अ कॉलोनियल रूल, अ नॉट ओनली पॉलिटिकल बट ऑल्सो मेंटल रूल, a cultural rule. So he said it's your task to awaken the world about Indian nationalism, about Indian spiritualism. What are these defining characteristics of being an Indian? तो वो जो spiritual aspect है, it is a defining value of Indians according to Vivekananda. He says कि हम लोग जो हैं, we are inherently more communitarian than individual. We are inherently more communitarian than individual. This is what Vivekananda says. We are inherently spiritual. We try to find peace. We try to obtain peace through various means. We try to break this circle of life and death through various means. Somebody is doing yoga, somebody is doing something else, somebody is worshipping God, somebody does not believe in God. Tolerance. Religious tolerance. It's a defining characteristic. You go to West, entire history according to Christians and Islamic world, और पूरी हिस्ट्री उनकी जो है फर्स्ट सेंचुरी एडी से शुरू होती है. उससे पहले उसको बोलते हैं बिफोर क्राइस्ट बीसी, और उसके बाद आफ्टर एनो डोमिनी जो हो गया. उनकी सारी हिस्ट्री इज अबाउट एस्टैब्लिशिंग हेजेमनी एट वन पर्टिकुलर प्लेस. Entire history about capture of Constantinople, capture of Palestine, the religious wars that have been going on. So hegemony establish करना वहां पे, that is their characteristic. He says in India, nobody is trying to establish an hegemony here. Our integral character is this religious tolerance. Christian comes to India, there is no fight in the Christian who is coming to India. He is not concerned about कि मेरे को इंडिया के अंदर अपना परचम लगाने के नहीं. मुस्लिम को इंडिया के अंदर है, he is not concerned about मेरे को इंडिया के अंदर अपना परचम लगाने के नहीं. हिंदू है, there is no concern about कि भाई हमें यहाँ पे कोई हिंदू राष्ट्र establish करना है कि नहीं. Hindu Rashtra is a different concept altogether, but for your understanding, this is what is meant by religious tolerance. He says that we are inherently tolerant people. We allow other person to practice their faith. We practice our faith ourselves. We are inherently people who are spiritual in nature. We are inherently people who are communitarian in nature. So ये कुछ defining characteristics हैं, defining values हैं हमारे एक इंडियन साइकी की, जो कि हमको इंडियन बनाती हैं. This is what he says is nationalism. This is Vivekananda's concept of nationalism. Spiritualism is at the core. Spiritualism. Different methods of worshipping or not worshipping, वो सारे के सारे methods spiritualism का part हैं. Different ways in which we perceive religion, we question religion. This art of religion, this art of questioning is what leads to religious tolerance, questioning. He says there are so many philosophies here. Ultimately, what we have learned from those philosophies that we should be questioning the philosophy. Vedanta philosophy है, उससे पहले मीमांसा philosophy है, उससे पहले logic of न्याय वाली philosophy है, योग philosophy है, कई सारी philosophies हैं. जो भी philosophy हैं, वो ultimately हमको question करना ही सिखा रही हैं. और क्योंकि हम हर चीज को question करते हैं, किसी चीज को मानते नहीं हैं, इसी वजह से हम religiously tolerant हैं. And this is what it defines our spiritual characteristic. I have a pursuit towards peace. I have a pursuit towards questioning. I have a pursuit towards tolerance of religion. And this is what defines nationalism for Vivekananda. And this is the nationalism concept जो आज की तारीख में भी सबसे ज्यादा relevant है. Language, Sons of Soil movement, वो सब बहुत ही small strands of nationalism है. There are sub-national movements हैं वो. लैंग्वेज के बेसिस पे कोई मूवमेंट हो गई, रीजन के बेस पे कोई मूवमेंट हो गई, रिलीजन के बेस पे कोई मूवमेंट हो गई. दे आर ऑल सब नेशनल, दे आर ऑल ऑफ सब नेशनल कैरेक्टर. एक ट्रूली नेशनल कैरेक्टर जो है कि हम सोचते क्या है कि कौन व्यक्ति इंडियन है वर्सेस कौन व्यक्ति अमेरिकन है या चाइनीज है या जर्मन है, वो सोचने के तरीके में है। जिस तरीके से हम सोचते हैं अपने आप को, वही तरीका है जो हमको डिफाइन कर रहा है, डिस्टिंग्विश कर रहा है बाकी किसी और नेशनैलिटी से। दिस इज व्हाट विवेकानंदा सेज अबाउट नेशनलिज्म। दिस इज अबाउट विवेकानंदा। These are the two broad philosophers that we should have been studying in our Indian philosophers thing course. Apart from that, you can read about Ambedkar. Ambedkar के बारे में मैंने आपको इसीलिए नहीं ज्यादा पढ़ा है because Ambedkar is not a philosopher, he is not a moral philosopher, he doesn't say what is right, what is wrong. Everybody has opinion, obviously everybody has an opinion about what is right, what is wrong. I have, you yourself have, everybody in the Rajendra Nagar has what is right, wrong. Ambedkar will also have, but Ambedkar is not, Ambedkar's life is more about his struggle for upliftment and after that his contribution in towards making India more equal society, a more opportunity based society. That is what Ambedkar's contribution is. Ambedkar's contribution is, as far as philosophy is concerned, ethics is concerned, he is not talking much about that. He is more concerned about upliftment of his people. He is more concerned about how would a free India, a new India actually behave. So his contribution is not as far as that is ethics is concerned. Similarly, social reformers जो हैं, Ambedkar certainly one of the most prominent social reformer. In your history, you will be reading about Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, widow remarriage के ऊपर, child marriage के ऊपर, you will learn about Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar. You will learn about, in your history again, you will learn about Savitribai Phule. You will learn about Pandita Ramabai. You will learn about Jyotiba Phule. All these social reformers you have to learn from your history books. That I'm not going to teach. That will be a repeat of your history classes. Rabindranath Tagore is one philosopher which we can read, but Rabindranath Tagore is a little bit out of context as far as our exam is concerned. That is why we do not give as much prominence in study to Rabindranath Tagore. Certainly not to say Rabindranath Tagore is not important. Extremely, extremely important philosopher. Few words, अगर मैंने start किया तो I'll just tell you few words about Rabindranath Tagore also. इतनी ज़्यादा importance है उनकी. Rabindranath Tagore is a critique of nationalism. Rabindranath Tagore and Gandhi had lots of debates. They exchanged letters and they critiqued each other about nationalism. Rabindranath Tagore was of the view that I said, that love of fatherland is right, but why should love stop at the border? जो मैंने आपको वहाँ पे बताया था. So that is Rabindranath Tagore. It's not a quote of Rabindranath Tagore, but that is the view of Rabindranath Tagore, that this nationalism is parochial in nature. This is what Rabindranath Tagore says. It's parochial. It confines people within the boundary of what they think is their nation. Vivekananda will come and define nationalism on the basis of spiritualism. Someone else will come and define nationalism on the basis of history. Someone else will come define nationalism on the basis of geography. Someone else will come and define nationalism on the basis of religion. So Rabindranath Tagore says that nationalism as a concept itself, it's so abstract, it's so vague that it inherently leads to division amongst people. So therefore, Rabindranath Tagore is against defining what a nation is. This is Rabindranath Tagore contribution, and he says that nation को हम define नहीं कर सकते हैं on the basis of some connotation of how we define what is the defining characteristic or distinguishing characteristic of a certain group of people. This is what Rabindranath Tagore's connotation is. Rabindranath Tagore's objection to nationalism is. He argued with Gandhi on this aspect also. Gandhi said independence from Britishers. Rabindranath Tagore said, well, that's fine, but what kind of independence do you seek from Britishers? What will be the nature of state that will be formed after Britishers are gone? So all such questions Rabindranath Tagore keeps on asking Gandhi. Gandhi keeps on replying to that. Rabindranath Tagore's contribution to philosophy, yes, it's immense, but for our perspective, it's for us to know that his objections on nationalism, they are more than sufficient for us. Rabindranath Tagore is one of the foremost, one of the pioneering universalists. He is objecting to nationalism. That means he is a universalist in nature. Rabindranath Tagore says, if you know the exact word, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where world has not been broken up into narrow domestic fragments. This is what Rabindranath Tagore says, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where the words come out. This entire poem of Rabindranath Tagore, my father, let my country awake. This is what Rabindranath Tagore is saying. So he's saying, let my country awake from all these narrow connotations of nationalism. Mind should be free without fear. This is what Rabindranath Tagore says. Mind should be free without fear, and there should not be any kind of narrow distinctions between people. Narrow distinctions such as based on history. Akbar ne rule kiya, therefore we are vanshaj of Akbar, we are vanshaj of Aurangzeb, hence we are superior. We are vanshaj of Ashoka, hence we are superior. We are vanshaj of Falana Dimkana, hence we are superior. We are vanshaj of some Kshatriya, some Brahman, therefore we are superior. He says, world should not be broken up into such narrow domestic fragments. It should be a free world. It should be a world without borders. That is the conception of universalism according to Rabindranath Tagore. So for Rabindranath Tagore, it is universalism. For other Indian philosophers or other Indian thinkers, especially nationalists who have contribution in Indian freedom struggle, they have a concept of nation in their mind. इसलिए हम रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर को हम इंडियन नेशनल स्ट्रगल के अंदर नहीं पढ़ते हैं. हिस्ट्री के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से रविंद्रनाथ, एज फार एज अ फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल इज कंसर्न, रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर इज नॉट इंपॉर्टेंट. ही इज नॉट द वन हु वाज अपोजिंग ब्रिटिशर्स. एंड FII, कई लोग बोलते हैं जैसे, दिस इज एन comment that I'm making apart from this course. Many people say that today you will be reading many times in newspapers, opposition says RSS का, VHP का, इन सबका national struggle के अंदर का contribution था. They were not fighting against Britishers. Not true to a large extent. Perfectly, it's more false to, it's false. It's not perfectly right. But at the same time, you see the contribution of Rabindranath Tagore not in independence struggle. Interestingly, what is the contribution of Ambedkar to independence struggle? You can read about it yourself. Ambedkar has absolutely zero contribution to independence struggle. Ambedkar never fought against British, never opposed anything that was British. Not to belittle Ambedkar, it is beyond my, I'm a very small person, I cannot even start to critique Ambedkar, I cannot even do that. But point is, from our perspective for this exam, independence struggle and the people and the leaders who came in it, they have defined what our nation is. उसी के लिए तो हम इंडिपेंडेंस मांग रहे थे. विवेकानंद ने डिफाइन किया इंडियन नेशन क्या है. गांधी जी ने उस चीज को समझा और आगे लेकर गए कि इंडियन नेशन क्या है. कांग्रेस पार्टी ने समझा कि भाई इंडियन नेशन क्या है, एंड देयरफॉर वी आर फाइटिंग फॉर स्ट्रगल ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर नेशन. Ambedkar, on the other hand, said that what will be the interest of a particular person, a particular section of people. So Ambedkar's contribution in national struggle, Ambedkar was almost all the times at war with Gandhiji, at war with Congress, and he was all the time, quote unquote, let's just say, favorite of Britishers. Britishers always used to, Ambedkar को हमेशा आगे करते थे गांधी जी के ऊपर कोई ना कोई वार करने के लिए, आगे करने के लिए. Ambedkar को ब्रिटिशर्स इस तरीके से बहुत इस्तेमाल करते थे. सो ही हैज एब्सोल्युटली नो कंट्रीब्यूशन इन इंडियन फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल. रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर वेरी लिटिल कंट्रीब्यूशन इन इंडियन फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल. कांग्रेस पार्टी, गांधी जी, विवेकानंदा अगेन इंडियन फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल, उस समय तो 1902 और 3 के अंदर इनकी डेथ भी हो गई थी विवेकानंदा की. सो विवेकानंदा वाज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ इंडियन फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल एज सच, बट ही डिफाइंड व्हाट इज नेशनलिज्म फॉर अस. So that is why these people are important. Ambedkar important in his own regard for fight against the systems of the society. Rabindranath Tagore important in his own regard for defining what is universal brotherhood. Vasudev Kutumbakam का concept. Again गांधी और Tagore, इनमें दोनों चीजें common है, Vasudev Kutumbakam. But Rabindranath Tagore used to pose these difficult questions to Gandhi, and Gandhi most of the time did not have answer to such questions. So these are all contribution of these Indian philosophers. I think that's it. These are all the Indian philosophers that we would be doing. Finally, I'll just give you a few notes. I'll not notes. I'll just tell you a few more things. एग्जाम में किस तरीके से पूछा जा सकता है? एग्जाम में आपसे पूछा जाएगा गांधीयन फिलोसफी का मॉडर्न डे इंटरप्रिटेशन. एग्जाम में आपसे पूछा जाएगा गांधीयन फिलोसफी and the people whom Gandhi inspired. There is a long list of people whom Gandhi inspired, long list of people whom Vivekananda inspired, long list of people whom Ambedkar has inspired. Vivekananda, for example, inspired Nikola Tesla. Gandhi inspired Aung San Suu Kyi. Gandhi inspired Martin Luther King Jr. Gandhi inspired Nelson Mandela. Obviously, Indian leaders certainly inspired by Gandhi, Vivekananda, Rabindranath Tagore, Ambedkar, many Indian political leaders, they have been inspired by all these people. So you must know a little bit about these people जो inspire हुए हैं इनसे, इन personalities से. Martin Luther King used the means of non-violence in his struggle for rights of blacks in United States. He was using the methods of Gandhi and he was advocating what Ambedkar was preaching. A disciple of Gandhi and advocating what Ambedkar is preaching, an interesting personality. Ambedkar ने जैसे rights of people who have been depressed उनके लिए struggle किया. So Martin Luther King was also struggling for rights of people who were depressed in US, who were the blacks. And the means that he was using, he was not using the means of Ambedkar or means of Bhagat Singh or any other person. He was using the means of Gandhi, non-violent. He was using the means of Satyagraha. Aung San Suu Kyi using the means of non-violence and Satyagraha against military rule in Myanmar. Nelson Mandela using the means of non-violence. Nelson Mandela was a violent man in his youth. He went to prison because of multiple factors, multiple crimes that he committed. He was a violent man. He also was involved in inciting youth or passion amongst youth. He went to jail because of that. Then he went to jail for 27 years. 27 साल जेल में रहे. लेकिन उसके बाद there he realized the power of non-violence. Realized the power of non-violence. From his jail he used to inspire people about activity, about how to win freedom, how to pursue their movement, Satyagraha movement with passion and all. So again, Nelson Mandela inspired by Gandhi's means of non-violence. So ये छोटी-छोटी चीजें हैं जो उनको एग्जाम में पूछी जा सकती हैं. That's all I think. That's about Indian philosophers. If any more philosophers you would like to be covered in the class, then you can write to that. आप अपने चैट के अंदर लिख सकते हो और आप बता सकते हो क्लास में अगर कोई और फिलोसोफर आपको करवाना है तो. From my side, these are over. लिस्ट ऑफ फिलोसफर्स बहुत बड़ी है. पूरी दुनिया के अंदर 50 हजारों फिलोसफर हैं. मेरे पास यहाँ पे नोट्स में कई सारे फिलोसफर्स के नाम लिखे हुए हैं. बट इट इज अनवाइज टू कवर ऑल ऑफ देम. इट वुड वेस्ट मोर टाइम. रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट उतना नहीं होने वाला है उसके ऊपर. थैंक यू वेरी मच. दैट्स ऑल फ्रॉम माई साइड. वील सी इफ यू हैव टू मीट नेक्स्ट टाइम और नॉट. दैट बट दिस इज ऑल फॉर मी. थैंक यू. हो गया? कोई क्वेरी नहीं है? चलो. नेक्स्ट क्लास कौन सी है? नो मेरे को